All right, party people. So in the last video that I made about the Arex Delta Gen 2, I made a bold statement / prediction that this handgun is the most important handgun of 2021. I made that prediction in that video because, well, I didn't get a chance to actually shoot it. When I made that video, I'm kind of changing up the way that I do gun reviews. I want to see if my predictions actually match reality. Well, since then, I've put a lot of rounds through it. I've managed to figure out how to lower the trigger weight by a pound, and I've broken it twice. All right, so welcome back, party people. Hope you guys are doing awesome this week. Oh, by the way, last week in the comments, someone asked me why I don't have any suppressors or anything on this channel. And I could go into a whole spiel about this, but the short answer is this. I think that tax stamps are an overreach of our federal government, and I don't want my money to help fund the NFA. And also, I don't want to willingly put myself on a list. I'm sure I'm on a list, but I didn't put myself there. So if you think that the NFA is government overreach, hit that little like button down below. It'll not only help us in the algorithm on getting this video out to as many people as possible and benefiting the gun community as a whole, but it'll also make an ATF agent cry probably. So my reasoning for saying that this is possibly the most important handgun of 2021 is as follows. I'm not gonna go into all the detail because you can go watch the other video if you wanna see all the details, but here's the basic. Reason number one, modular optics with multiple plates. I actually have the Holosun 47K on here. I'll show you guys that up close here in a bit. Also, really good texturing on here. It actually has a decent trigger that was pulling at 6.5 pounds, but like I mentioned earlier, I've managed to get it down to about 5.5 pounds. I'll show you how to do that later as well. Has a really low bore axis. This gun is slimmer than most of its competition, with the exception of the Glock 43, Glock 43X, Glock 48, and basically any single stack subcompact gun are gonna be a little bit thinner than this one, but this one is thinner than most double stacks. And the reason that that stuff matters is because this gun comes in at around $433 with the modular optics system, and then without the modular optics, it comes in about $389. If you're new to this channel, I know the subscribers know this. If you see anything in this video that you want to check the price on, or maybe pick something up for yourself, there will be a complete parts list. You just follow the very first link in the video description, or you can go check the comment section. I will pin the link to the build list in the comments section for you. And just so you know, these videos are not monetized, so if you're seeing ads on here, that's because Google does what they want to do. And the only way that we're really supported is if you use the links to make purchases. And that's basically it. We do have a couple of sponsorships, but it's not much. So real quick, let's compare this to its competition. The main three that I'm comparing it to are the CZ-P10, the Smith & Wesson M&P, and the Glock line. You could also compare it to FN, but FN is so much more expensive. It's kind of in a different class, especially for their modular optics tactical versions. This comes in at $173 less than the CZ-P10 series, whether it's the S, C, or full-size model. It also comes in, on average, $197 less than the Gen 5 Glock MOSs, and it comes in $166 less than the M&P 2.0s that have the core modular optics on them. Now, someone also asked me last week in the comments section why I didn't think this was a good competitor to the Taurus G3 Toro and the Canik TP9. Here's a couple of reasons. All of the previous guns that I just mentioned, as well as the FN tactical versions, I believe, come in at least 3 different sizes of handguns. And Glock comes with probably the most sizing options, being the 43X MOS, 48 MOS, Glock 26 MOS, 19, 17, and their Glock 45, which we're gonna classify that as an X series sizing, and that's where the grip is longer, but the slide remains, the compact size. The Canik TP9, I believe the TP9 SFX, if I'm saying that wrong, I'm sorry. That is their full-size competition gun. The reason that this isn't a good competitor to that one is on the TP9 SFX, when you remove the optic plate, you also lose the rear dovetail. There's no co-witnessing with it. And I haven't seen any aftermarket plates that allow a rear dovetail on it. If I am wrong, I am sorry, but I searched and I couldn't find them. The TP9 Elite is more of a compact size, similar to this one. And it's the same thing. When you remove the optic plate to put an optic on there, you lose backup iron sights. The only version of the Canik that retains the iron sights is the TP9 Elite SC for subcompact. And it's the only one out of all their modular optics that retains the backup irons on the rear. So this is not comparable to those because they don't retain the rear sight. The reason why I don't think this is a competition for the Taurus G3 Toro is the G3 Toro, although it does have some pros over this one, it does not come in subcompact. It only comes in two sizes, compact and full size. So I think because this comes in 3 different sizes, which is the compact, similar to a Glock 19. They have the X, which is similar to the Glock 45 or the Glock 19X. And then they have the L version, which is similar to the Glock 17 full-size version. Because this has 3 sizes available, retains the back plates, uses modular optic plates, I think the first 3 of Glock, CZ, and Smith & Wesson are the most comparable to this one. And I think that that keeps the comparison more fair. Not that the other guns are bad, I just don't think they're comparable. So when I made the last video, I had a couple of predictions to how I thought that this was going to perform at the range. I also had a couple of concerns about it as well. A couple of concerns that I had was I was wondering if it was going to be a little bit snappy. The bore axis is pretty low, but I have seen reports of people saying that it's a little bit snappy considering that it's 9mm. The other concern that I had is the modular optics plates that are on here are made of plastic or polymer instead of a metal like most other optics plates. And that had me worried that maybe it won't hold 0, maybe the plate will break. I have seen reports of that. And I had a few others as well. If you want to see those, like I said, you can go watch the video from 2 weeks ago. So before we talk about whether or not this met or exceeded my expectations or fell below, I wanted to talk about how I broke this thing twice. So a couple of changes you might notice from last week's video is I actually got the Holosun 407K installed on here using the Type 5 plate. And then, like you remember last week, I mentioned some Ameriglow suppressor height sights. I also got those and they arrived as well, and I got them installed, and they actually installed quite easily. Usually with front dovetails, I have a hard time. These installed super nicely. Didn't have any issues at all. Like I said earlier, I will put a link in the description where I found these. And I also found this for less than 200 bucks if you want to check out the red dot. So, and then I have the Enforce APLC. The reason I put all of this on here is this is how I would actually carry this gun. You know, once I'm done with the testing and everything, you know, I'll decide whether or not I'm going to, actually carry it, but I wanted to test it as if I'm going to carry it. I also have the Holosun 507C, which we're going to cover in a future video. But if you were, the 507C has multiple reticles. It basically has a dot and then it has a circle with a dot. It has 2 reticles with it. Both of these have 50,000 hours of battery life. This one is a lot cheaper because it's a dot only. Now, with the Holosun 507Cs and 407Cs, you get basically the same size dot. So with these, on the other hand, if you get the 407K, obviously the dot's not that big, it's just a camera. You get a 6 MOA dot with the 407. With the 507, you get a 3 MOA dot. And I thought that was kind of strange that they changed the dot sizes between the two, because on the, the C models, they are the exact same dot sizes. I thought that was strange, but I always like a 3 to 3 1/4 MOA dot, and then when you make it brighter, it makes the dot bigger. Whereas on the 6 MOA dots, you can dim it down, but it doesn't make the dot any smaller. So keep those things in mind. But we will be making future videos on both of these red dots and doing some comparisons, and I'm waiting on the RMR CC to arrive as well. So we'll go ahead and take the snap caps out of here. I like to keep those in there when I'm dry firing and stuff. So the first thing that I broke on this handgun, and I'm gonna be really honest with you guys, both of the things that broke are 100% my fault. I'm not blaming anyone, okay? The first thing that I broke was below this red dot are 4 screws that mount this plate to the slide. I originally had installed a 507C on here, and I realized, you know what, that 507C is just a tad bit too big for the size of this slide. And you can even see here that this red dot is slightly wider than the slide. Not much, but slightly. And I was like, okay, whatever, I'll just go test it. Well, the next day, this 407C arrived. And so I was like, screw it, I'm gonna take it off and I'm going to install this guy. Well, the way you take this off is you take these 2 screws out and then you're left with the plate, and then the plate has 4 screws that go into the slide. I had no Loctite on here. I wanna be very clear about that. 0 Loctite, and I just wanna give you kind of an example of how this works. So these 4 holes here, you just screw those and they go directly into the slide. Then on the bottom of here, you get these nuts that go there, and then your red dot threads into those nuts directly. And then you also got these, some of the plates are different, but you have these little standoffs here, little lugs that hold your red dot into place. I have stripped tons of RMR screws in the past. Typically they're the screws that hold the red dot down. I end up having to drill them out, and then I'm able to, just back them out with a drill. Usually no harm, no foul. I can just put another screw in there. Usually the reason that I strip them out is because I use too much Loctite. The difference is with this, I had no Loctite on here. I didn't feel like I over torqued the screws. I was just test fitting was all I was doing. I was just seeing. And anyways, I took the dot off and I got all the screws out, and then I got to this last one. The one that I stripped out is this top left one. And basically it's stripped out. And I was like, crap, all right. So I got the drill out, I drilled it out, and then obviously there was a nub left, and I didn't have enough to grab with my pliers, so I had to drill all the way down into the slide to get it out. And then I ordered a set of taps, because I kind of boogered up the sides of the walls, and I re-tapped it. The problem is the tap broke, and I bought a good tap. I didn't buy a cheap tap. I bought a good tool steel tap, and I did it very slowly. I'd do a couple of threads, I'd back it out, do a few threads, back it out. I know how to do tapping. The tap broke inside of here. Then I had to drill that out. So now I'm at a point where I've got the tap out, but the hole is now bigger. So I'm probably gonna send the slide off to someone to actually re-tap it for a little bit of a bigger screw. That way I don't screw it up. Yes, that is 100% my fault. However, I do believe the reason that it happened without Loctite is because we have plastic plates. I think what happened was, and this is actually the plate that I was using, you can see this little bit of metal that's right here. This is the screw that actually stripped out. These screws were all fine. This one, maybe I over tightened it. I don't think I did, but I could have. When you tighten these down, because this is plastic, overnight, I think that this plastic either swelled or something happened, and it put more force on that screw than I initially put on it. And that's kind of the downside to plastic, I guess. It's kind of like if you think about it, plastic is a very flexible material. Like on the FN 509 Tactical, their RMR system uses an O-ring on the bottom, and it puts upward pressure on the RMR screws, and you don't have to use Loctite. So I'm wondering if that happened, a similar effect to this. So that took me a whole day of trying to fix and ended up making it worse. My fault, I'm not gonna blame anyone, but like I said, I think the reason it happened is because of plastic plates. Now, I am talking with the company right now, and they are gonna produce metal plates for this gun. I'm not gonna tell you who they are yet because I don't want them to get overrun with orders. They are a small company. They're mainly gonna focus on 2 types of plates, which we will talk about here in a little while. Keep in mind, I broke the RMR screw for the plate prior to actually doing live fire. So it made me even more interested to see, what the results would be in regards to the red dot holding 0. Now, something to keep in mind here is these plates use 4 screws to lock down to the slide. Glock MOS only uses 2. So the fact that I have, hey, that almost fits, but not really. So let's pretend that this is the Arex that I got this on. So the fact that I have 3 screws in place should hold it nice. I was worried that with this one not being secured right here, that it might flex up like that. And I really put some torque on here. I was trying to make this thing flex, and I can't get it to flex. But I was still worried that under recoil that this would wobble, but it doesn't, thankfully. Now, when we get the metal plates, that wobble will be less of a worry. But I wanted to show you that, I'm not too worried about it because even Glock uses 2 screws to secure their plates. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing is totally up to you. But I haven't had any problems, especially with their Gen 5 MOS plates. So the second part that I broke is actually in the slide. I wanted to polish this trigger up, which I did get done, and I'll show you how I did that in a second. And I was looking for some tutorials on how to disassemble this gun, and I was only able to find 1 tutorial. And I believe they were speaking in Slovenia, if that's even a language. I don't know if Slovenian's a language. Let me know in the comments, what language do they speak in Slovenia? Is it Slovenian or is it something else? I'm not that cultured. Anywho, with most, these slides and stuff, with like CZs and all that, there's usually a piece that you pull down and then your back plate will slide off. And I was watching this guy's video, and I didn't see this part because I didn't know what was going on because he wasn't speaking English, but apparently this is similar here to your safety plunger in a Glock. I hope you guys can see this. So to kind of give you a comparison here, so Glock here, right, has this safety plunger that, you know, goes up and down, and that prevents the firing pin from coming through the breech face, you know, prematurely. So this one has one as well. Well, I was trying to get this back plate off, and I was trying to pull down, you know, right here. Because like on a Glock slide, or in a lot of slides, CZs are like this too, you just pull down, and then you can get this plate off. Well, I looked at the video, and I must have accidentally skipped this part, but I was trying to move this, and it doesn't move. So I literally just put something in here, and I pulled down, and I pulled too hard, and I broke the firing pin sleeve. The way you actually do this is you depress that, then you pull down on this plastic. Now you can get your back plate off. Comes right off. What had happened was I didn't get that pulled down, and it broke it. Let me show you. So this is the piece that broke off, and it goes, you can probably see it, goes kind of like right here. You see what I mean? Goes there, it broke. Interestingly, I did order another one, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But interestingly, I put this back together, put it inside the gun, and it seems to still function, which I still think is crazy. I don't know if I'm going to go test fire it like this, but I did order a new one. And like I said, we'll talk more about that process in a minute. But I wanted to show you guys that in case you have one of these and you're trying to get these apart. This guy basically disassembles just like a Glock firing pin, except you have a spring here, and then there's a spring back here. And I'll show you real fast. I just use this little block here. I place that here, and then you just pull down on the spring, and then you literally have two spring cups, just like a Glock. Okay? That spring comes off. This comes out, and then you'll see here, there's another spring that goes back in here. I want to take this apart so I can show you what to polish. So what I did was I took my Dremel and some Mother's aluminum polish that I use on a lot of stuff, as well as some 2000 grit sandpaper. And I didn't want to remove material, I just wanted to knock some stuff down. So I polished this entire inside edge right here. I polished the top of it right here. I polished the sides. And then this round circular thing that you're looking at right here, I also polished it because it slides inside. I noticed that it goes inside of this plastic channel, and it was a little bit rough. And so I smoothed that out. That did a lot of good. The other part that I polished was this part of the trigger head right here that's similar to Glock. I simply took some 2000 grit sandpaper after it because there was some stamping marks right there. There's still a couple. I don't know how well you guys can see that, but there were some stamp marks on there. I got those all kind of knocked down. Then I took 2000 grit sandpaper, took the Dremel after it, got that polished. The other part that I polished, and I didn't have to take all this out, was the top of this guy right here. So when I pull this trigger, you see that move up and down. Okay, that little piece right there, I just took a small polishing pad for the Dremel, and I was able to get that pretty decently. And I want to get it better, but this gun is a little bit complicated when you take it apart, but don't worry, we'll make a teardown video so you can see that. But I didn't have to take that out, nor did I have to take that out. The other one that I polished was the little safety plunger thing that we have to depress to take it apart. You can see it shining right there. Now, interestingly enough, I don't know how you take this thing out. I was going to try to take it out. I can't figure it out. This is your extractor right here, and it is held in here under a ton of tension because that extractor is pushing. And I didn't want to take it out or try to because I was worried I wouldn't be able to get it back in. I thought that you could take it out by driving this pin out right here, but that just takes out your chamber indicator. So I don't know how this comes out, to be honest. And I went and rewatched the Slovenian video, and they never removed this. So that's kind of fascinating. I don't know what you do if you ever have to replace your spring. The complication of a lot of this stuff really makes you appreciate how simple Glocks are. So let me put this back together, and I'm going to show you a trigger pull weight test, and then you can actually go compare it to the video we did 2 weeks ago when we tested the trigger before I did this little polishing job. Put it back together right there. All we gotta do is push this back in, And then we got to do the same thing to put it back in. We need to depress on the safety plunger, get our tool there, pull down, and just let go. And it will stay in place for a minute. And then you're able to pop that in and then pull that, and now it clicked into place. All right, let's get some dummy rounds in here. We're gonna do a trigger pull test. Now, last week, when I did the trigger test, we were pulling at about 6.5 pounds. This trigger doesn't feel like it pulls at 6.5 pounds because, you know, when you come back to this point here, it's such a nice defined wall in such a short break that it feels so much lighter. So right there, we pulled at about 5.4 pounds. That is 1 to 1.1 pounds less than before the trigger job. So if you haven't done a trigger job on your Arex Deltas, that's how you do it. That one pulled right at 5.4 pounds. Do another one. That one actually pulled right at 5 pounds. That one was actually a little bit less. Let's try that again. Oh, that's going down. That one pulled at like 4.8. That's kind of crazy, huh? I did notice that after, you know, testing it at the range that the trigger did, well, it didn't really lighten up, it just got smoother. That one pulled 5.3. So right there, we're already 1 pound to 1.5 pounds lighter than factory with just a polish job. But now we need to talk about a couple other things. I want to talk about, does this live up to the hype that I set for it? You know, did it hit my expectations, exceed them, or hit below them? I also wanted to talk about some new cons that I've now discovered about this gun. And then we'll wrap up the video. Back up top. All right, cool guys. You know, that's how I broke it. That's how I've kind of fixed it and how I lowered the trigger weight. Now, I wanted to talk about some new unforeseen cons. I mean, I should have foresaw these cons, but I just didn't. And before we get into, you know, how this gun actually performed at the range. Number one con is, you know, like I said, I broke that firing pin sleeve. There's literally no retailers in the United States that sell parts for this gun. I did go to the Arex website and order it from overseas. I ended up ordering, obviously, that firing pin sleeve, and I ended up ordering the extended magazine release. I wanted to test it out and see what it was like. Although the magazine release was like $10 and the firing pin sleeve was $3, with shipping overseas, it came out to $43, and it stated that it should take 10 to 14 business days, which means like a month, to arrive. Now, I don't know how fast or how slow it's gonna arrive. When we make another video on this gun, I will definitely tell you whether or not it arrived, you know, in a short time frame or a long time frame, because it's coming directly from Slovenia. So if you are a gun retailer and you are watching this, I would highly suggest buying a bunch of the parts for these guns, especially if they're easy to break. Now, another bummer that I found when I was looking for parts on this gun is you can buy every single part of this gun separately except for the slide. And that kind of bummed me out because when I stripped that screw out in the slide, I figured, hey, you know, I'm making this for content creation purposes, but I didn't get it just for me. I did it to create content, so maybe I should order another slide for it. I was gonna pay whatever price they had because I was really worried about the zeroing on this thing. And you can't buy it. Maybe you can get in touch with them and maybe they will send you one, but I don't know yet. So let's talk about how it performed at the range. Now, like I mentioned earlier, I broke this, I stripped out this screw hole before I ever got to test it. So last week, my buddy Steve and I from Mr. Big Kid channel, we went over to the shooting range to test it and test some other guns. And I want to give a big shout out to Ted Shooting Range in Queen Creek for allowing us to shut down their lanes so that we could film. If you guys are in the Queen Creek area of Arizona, go check them out. They're pretty awesome people. So given the fact that I was running 3 screws in a plastic plate and I'm running the Holosun 407K, this thing held 0 throughout the entire range day. I believe it was right around 100 rounds that I put through here. Now this isn't the in-depth review. This is just gonna be the first live fire impressions. We will get to another video that gives you my final thoughts after I thoroughly test this a little bit more. But held 0 like a champ. I didn't get this zeroed for the distance that I want yet. I'm gonna get this zeroed up for, I'll probably do a 40-yard zero on this. I'm not 100% sure yet. I like to, zero different pistols at different lengths, just depending on what they're used for. For everyday carry, sometimes I do 40 yards, sometimes I do 30 yards, just kind of depends. Shot incredibly well. It was a little bit snappy, but not in the way that I anticipated. The most snappy gun that I own that's in 9mm is the HK VP9. It's just really snappy for some stupid reason. I'm guessing it has to do with the tall bore axis. With this one, it was more comparable to say like a Glock 26 in regards to the snappiness. And what was really strange about it was, although it was snappy, I never felt like I needed to milk the grip. Sometimes on some of my Glocks and other guns that I have, just kind of depending on, the size of the gripping and everything, I will find myself milking the grip sometimes, not because I'm improperly gripping it, but because of sweat. And I don't care who you are, unless you have the strength of Thor, you're gonna have to reposition your grip when your hands sweat unless you have a really good stipple job. So for factory texture, and my hands were getting a little bit sweaty, it held on really well. Right there, felt beautiful. The gun is just as accurate as I am. I didn't have really any flyers. Basically wherever I pointed the red dot, this thing hit. And the trigger felt amazing during live fire. Sometimes triggers can feel different when you're doing live fire versus when you're dry firing them. The accelerator cuts that are up here, they really helped in mitigating that recoil. I really felt like I could get a positive grip on those. And although it did want to jump back a little bit, I was able to really get my mitts around this thing. It's probably one of the more pleasurable guns that I've had the experience of shooting, even though it was snappy, just because of how well I can just hang on to it. My hands stick to it very well. I had 0 malfunctions during this test and nothing went bad. I didn't have any failures to lock open. I didn't have any failures to go into battery, no stovepipes, nothing like that. And I used both the extended mag as well as the flush fit magazine when we were doing the test. So this still isn't an in-depth review, but I will say this gun basically met every single expectation that I had for it. And none of the worries that I had about it ever came true. The red dot, despite having only 3 screws in the mounting plate and being a plastic plate, performed great. Racked it off my belt a few times, held 0 like a champ. Have no problems there. The accuracy was just as good as I am, so therefore I can't say anything negative about that. Overall, I think that this was a really good decision to get this. I am bummed about that I stripped out that hole. That's actually a bigger bummer than that striker sleeve, so I'm gonna see if I can't get that tapped for something a little bit larger, obviously now because the screw's too big. And like I mentioned earlier, I have someone working on plates for this. The main plates that they're gonna be producing, I believe, are the Type 2 and the Type 5 plates. The Type 2 plates are for your Trijicon RMRs and your Holosun 507Cs, and then the Type 5s are gonna fit your 507Ks, and I believe you can adapt these to work with the Trijicon RMR CC. I'm not 100% on that because I'm waiting on the RMR CC to arrive. So those will be the main 2 plates that they make. I think that's gonna be the main optics that people run on this. But I do have a question for you guys. Number 1, if you know where I can buy another slide, let me know. Send me a DM on Instagram or something, or email me, or leave it in the comments. Don't put any .coms, because if you hit .com, the algorithm automatically filters those out. Just put a name of a company if you know where I can buy another slide for this. Despite those things, this thing is held up like a champ, and I love it to death. Let me know your thoughts, guys, down in the comments section below. What do you think of this? Do you think it sucks? Do you think it's great? I'd love to hear what you guys think. But if you're interested in watching more content that is similar to this, I will put a little playlist right up here or right up here, and you can go binge on that. But until next time, guys, I love you, and you guys stay sexy.